the training, as it were, the studying, and you had your music exam, the practical, and the listening one, was it, or writing, or what was that?
Yeah, so it was the music exam was basically theory, and the listening exam
Sure.
was coming up on the Friday, and so the Friday before, I'm getting ready for the exam, and on Sunday we got probably the worst phone call we could ever get. My father got a phone call. He phoned into Christopher's job, which is my older brother, his job, because he hadn't heard from him in a couple of days, which is very unlike my brother. My brother would check in every day. He told my father that he was going on Friday, that he was going to work Saturday morning, and then he was going to his 21st birthday party on Saturday night and going back to work on Sunday. So my father didn't hear from him on Saturday and rang in to his work on Sunday, and they said, no, Christopher hasn't turned up to work the last 2 days. So that was massive. That was my dad just broke down crying because he knew something was wrong. So the kind of search party started. He started ringing his phone and ringing everyone he knew. It was. He got the police involved. They traced his phone to Galway. Mum and Dad went out to Galway looking for him. Fintan Gavin, who's a big name in poker in Ireland, he lives in Galway, and he was on the ball. He welcomed them in and started a search party in Galway, and he was brilliant. I have to mention him in this. So anyway, kind of that long story, a bit shorter. We on Tuesday we got the phone call saying that he was found. He was found dead. He hung himself in Maynooth College, which was where he went to college, from a tree. So yeah, it was. My mum and dad. Yeah, my mum and dad. They were on their way back from Galway. They got the phone call. They told the person who was in our house at the time, kind of looking after us, the news, but not to tell us until we got home. They came through the door, and I just knew by the way they came in, that the news wasn't good. So yeah, that hit us massive.
Did your father or your mother? Because obviously I know that you're a close-knit family. I spoke about family awareness and stuff like that. Did your father or your mother have any inkling that Christopher was going through a hard time, or that anything like this? I mean, I understand that you said that your dad hadn't heard from him for a couple of days and stuff, but did they have any inkling he was going through like a tough time or stuff like that?
No, and this was the thing. This was what like took us first. We just couldn't believe it. We were trying to think up until then. You go over every fucking second in your head about, the way he was, the way you treated him. Believe me, I've been up and down every day. I've been with him. I've been and we at the time we didn't know there was anything wrong. But when he was found with a letter, so a suicide letter. So the letter explained that he was going through mental illness for years. And we didn't know. He hid it so well because he was the type of person where he'd do anything for anybody. He'd always ask me my troubles every night. He'd say, "Keith, what's going on? You don't look too good." He'd always trying to help me and the family. He was never one to talk about what he was going through, but he just wanted to help everybody else. He was that type of person. So he'd sit down with me, he'd talk about my troubles, he'd help me. This was like most nights. He'd make it his business to go down to his two nanas one day a week, and his nana and granddad. So Nana Jenny Hegarty, which a lot of people know from the poker scene.
Sure.
He'd be going down to them one day a week, and he'd sleep over, and he'd go to mass with them, and he just wanted everyone else to be happy, which is usually the case with kind of these when people are going through mental issues. The last person you'd think, because they want they're this very vibrant person, and they want to make everyone happy. So that's the type of person he was. So getting back to the point, after we read the suicide letter, which is basically he mentioned each of us and why he done it and everything else, we also found 2 diaries in his bedroom covering 2 years, and it logged every night. And we found in the diaries that he had 2 alter egos. So this is where it gets crazy.
Sure.
He had himself, and he'd be talking all happy stuff, like I was with Keith and Kevin today, and we went here and there, and it was really nice. But then he had Ivan and Tom, which were his 2 alter egos. So when Tom was writing, it was usually between like 12 o'clock at night and 3 in the morning was when he'd kind of log in. And his writing was different. It was crazy writing. It was like, it could have even been a different handwriting.
Sure.
So it was crazy. Like, you could tell that Christopher wasn't a part of this writing at all. The stuff he was saying, it was all dark stuff. It was all against, who he was and demons and stuff. And then Ivan would check in then as well. And we believe that, a lot of professionals and stuff looked at these diaries and believed that the reason why he wrote them was because when he was in these people, like schizophrenia, when he was this person, he didn't remember what he done or said when he was this person. So that's why he started a diary, so that he could read over when it was Ivan and what shit was going on.
So basically, it was kind of like there was 3 people.
Yeah.
There was Christopher, but then, as you said, when it came to like midnight, a little switch went, and then somebody else took over his body, or another 2 people took over his body, and subconsciously he knew this was happening, but he couldn't control it.
Yeah. Well, when I go back to it, when I look back on things, it was like he could control it a bit. Like, he knew when it was going to switch, because I was down with him, as I said, I'd be in the kitchen with him 10, half 10, and our thing was having tea and biscuits and a little chat. Could have been a couple of times a week. And he'd say, make me a cup of tea. So I'd be making him a cup of tea, and I'd be getting the biscuits out, and then he'd vanish from the kitchen, and he'd be gone, and he'd be up to the attic, up to his room. And like, I'd be thinking at the time, what a real cunt. Just rather make you a cup of tea and biscuits and they're gone. So at the time, you just think, he was on a phone call, or he was tired, or blah, blah, blah. This happened a couple of times, and it's only afterwards I could say, that he felt that something bad was kicking in his brain, and he didn't want us to see it. So it was controlled on that level to the point that we didn't see it. But we go back and we see things like him breaking his phone, throwing his phone, little spurts of anger that weren't like him. But as I said, at the time, you wouldn't think that extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a professional. I mean, we've all been through it, Keith, you, me, other people, maybe not to what your brother Christopher went through. But do you think one of his kind of lasting legacies, as it were, was to shield yourself and the family from this, or these people, these alter egos, so that you wouldn't see this person, you wouldn't see what internally he had became through no fault of his own?
Exactly. So, as I said before, he was always trying to make us happy. He was the type of person that if there was a big group of friends that he had, and he'd be the one to make them on me. Not the way everyone's like, oh, I'm doing this and doing that, whereas he make it his business to Pizza Hut on Tuesday at 7. It was a thing, could be in 3 weeks, but he'd be ringing everyone, get them all together. That sort of person, he wanted everyone. And when we were at these events, he'd only be happy if every single person was happy. If there was one person having a shit time, he'd be over with them and he'd be having a bad time with them. So that was his thing. So yeah, coming to the end of his time, it was probably kicking in a lot stronger than what it was before. Looking at the diaries, that was the case. There was more logs coming to the end of the bad stuff. And it was really demonized stuff. It was stuff all against who he was, and people don't like you, and you're a vile piece of shit. All these horrible notions against him, which we all, as you said, we all have them kind of minor episodes of that where we'd be saying to ourselves, you know, you're nothing, you're not, even coming into this, up to this podcast or interview with yourself, I was thinking, you know, my demons are at me going, people, you know, you're not going to look great, you're not going to sound great. So we all get, but he had this on a massive scale.
Yeah.
And yeah, now that you mention it, yeah, it was probably getting so bad that, as you said, it was going past probably the point of trying to get help. And yeah, he didn't want the people he loved to see him as something that he wasn't.
Did he? I mean, obviously, I know this is a personal thing between yourselves and your family. Before you or your dad or your mum found the diaries, and again, we don't have to go into it fully, but in any of the suicide note you said that you left, did he mention or did he point in any way, shape, or form to these two demons that were within him? Or did you guys have to find his diary to find that out?
We had to find the diary to kind of find it out. In the letter, it was like, you know, he was fighting demons, and he couldn't continue. But specifically, now we found the diaries, but he left them there for us.
Right.
I actually remember a time I was up in his attic, up in the room, and I seen one of the diaries, you know, and me being a young lad, I was laughing, you know, you keep a diary, okay, you know, and I went to grab it, you know, just to have a look. Oh, I'm going to read the diary, and it was the most serious I've ever seen him get. It was like he shot across the room, grabbed the fucking thing off me, and he was like, "You're not going to read that until after I'm dead," you know. And here's me looking at him going, "What? You're going to die before me," you know. And then it was just kind of laughed and shrugged off, and yeah, I wasn't the type of person to go against his will and sneak in and have a look at the diary. So that was that. But yeah, that was something that I did go back to after it happened. My brain was like,
yeah, of course.
So
I mean, it goes to show that even the happiest people can hide it very, very well. I mean, there's obviously been other cases around the world, and the one thing that springs to mind, obviously, everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about, and also the happiest people are happy because they don't want you to deal with what they're dealing with. They try and make others happy because they never want to see anyone enduring what they're enduring. I mean, so moving on from the unfortunate episode passing away of Christopher. So, do you think that with your brother passing, it affected you different than it affected the rest of your family?
Yeah. So, it affected me very strange. I kind of went into fight mode. So when my mom and dad were grieving and my little brother were grieving, I kind of couldn't grieve. And I thought that there was like something wrong with me, because I kind of had to kind of console my mom and dad and my brother. I became, you know, the person that kind of helped them. And then I realized that I built a barrier so much that, you know, I was looking at them cry and stuff like that, and go to counselors and stuff, and kind of start working on it, whereas I wasn't even near that point. You know, I couldn't cry. I almost was questioning if I ever loved them, how if I'm a psychopath. All these weird emotions are coming into my head because I just couldn't feel anything. I just couldn't. You know, it was very strange. Even at the funeral or after, I just wasn't able to grieve. I just felt nothing, and that kind of went into all of life. I didn't feel happy about seeing people. I didn't feel. I did. You know, someone could have punched me in the face, and I wouldn't have felt it. It was very strange feeling.
Do you feel that you were? It was kind of obviously the grief taking over, but you were being like a stone, like a rock for your mother, your father, and your younger brother. That they were obviously grieving and letting it out, and obviously very, very upset. I'm not saying you weren't, but do you feel that you had to be a rock for them? Somebody in the family had to step up.
Exactly. Yeah. If kind of came on naturally. It wasn't that like I felt, you know, I'm going to have to be the big person here. It just kind of took that way, and yeah, I basically became a rock. I don't know how helpful I was to them, but I just couldn't. I think at the start I didn't want to be an extra burden on my mother and father by them having to look after me, but then that led into me being a pure stone. As I said, just not feeling anything, and you know, I tried to go to the same counsellor that my mum and dad were going to, and my brother, and I went to him, and I think after the second session, he was just like, "There's no point in continuing this because you're not at a place where we can start this process yet." He says, "I'm not getting that out of you," but that's not a bad thing. It's just that's how it affects some people. He's like, "There's no point in you coming here anymore because you're not ready to release, so I can't help you." So yeah, I didn't even feel that much out of that statement, but it was like, yeah, fair enough. Whereas, and then like it affected my mom. My mom was like, my mom was having, before this happened, she was having a really good poker year. It was probably one of our best years in poker. She won like 4 packages to the World Series of Poker worth like 12K each. And she sold 3 of them. So, you know, a good bit of money there. But then after Chris passed, she was like, her brain was everywhere. And
of course.
She had this ticket, you know, for the World Series of Poker. And she was kind of thinking, will I play? Will I not play? Will it be good for me? Will it help me kind of take my mind off things? Or will I be a mess? You know, all these sort of emotions were going on. And she talked to people like Paul Parkinson, who's a great friend of the family, and all these sort of people were saying to her, you know, play, because at least for while you're playing, you know, you'll be in the moment where you won't be, because obviously that's all she's thinking about is losing her firstborn.
Of course.
So at least, you know, if she played cards for a bit, it would take her mind off. So yeah, they went a few months later. They went. I think it was the month after. They went over to Vegas, try and get their head.
Yeah.
But no, it didn't work. She said she was a mess. She couldn't concentrate. She didn't want to be there. Yeah. So yeah, and it obviously my mom will, you know, she'll never ever get over it, obviously. Just never will. But she learned coping mechanisms, and you know, every now and again she lets a good cry out. And over time she was like always developing, you know, skills how to kind of move on in a way. But like for me, it just didn't happen for years. So leading on, so after I found out the news, I had to do my music exam. I went in there. I was a complete mess.
How long? Sorry to interrupt you. How long after Chris passed away did you have to do your music exam?
2 days.
2 days. Fuck's sake.
Yeah. So the night before, my music instructor, Tony Doherty, he's a legend, by the way, I have to get his name in there, he's a legend. He came over to my house and he just consoled me and said, look, obviously you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it, but if you don't do it, there wasn't things in place at the time where they could give you, a different test. If you I think a few years ago they released, a grievance thing where if something extraordinary happens, you can do a different exam a few months later, but that wasn't the case back in 2007. So I had, if I wanted to get into college, I had to go and do it, and that was that. So I went in, my brain was a mess. I smoked 25s on the way there, I didn't even smoke. I sat down, I done the kind of theory part of it. I kind of flew through that, and then I do the listening part. We were studying the love theme from Romeo and Juliet at the time by Tchaikovsky. And when they started playing it, my brain just went. They started, with the music playing and whatever. I just couldn't concentrate. I ended up just walking on out there. They corrected what they could, but it wasn't good enough. But I don't think I would have been able to go to Maynooth College anyway, because that's where my brother hung himself from. So that was the college I was trying to get into, and I don't think I would have been able to get off the train there every day and walk past and walk, so even if I did get into the college, I don't think I would have went.
Because it'd been tough to do that day in, day out, having to go to where his... Yeah. So
I felt like there's something going on when going in there every day.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and then having that kind of an everyday occurrence, having to face that. I mean, going on from that, did you start feeling you were spiraling out of control, or?
Yeah. So what happened to me was I had 2 years of the kind of feeling that I was telling you about. And I was feeling more, I was at home and I was getting frustrated, and I was I think my grieving at the time was kind of snapping at everyone and just not being a nice person to be around. After kind of 2 years, and I was doing a business course, FETAC level 6, that I didn't even want to do. I just done it. So, I'd be doing something.
Yeah.
And it came to the stage where I just had to get out of there.